Begin the Gemara today on Daf Chavav Amud Beis, 3 lines up from the bottom of the Amud where it says Meisvei. Okay, we're in the middle of a sugya, and this is going back to the Mishnah on Chavav Amud Aleph at the bottom of the Amud, where the Mishnah spoke about a case where the Zrikas Adam on the Mizbeach was done in the wrong location, Shaloi B'mkaimai. In different kinds of cases, whether blood that has to be put on the Mizbeach was placed on the ramp, or the bloods that have to be on the top part of the Mizbeach were put at the bottom, or on the outside Mizbeach was placed on the inside Mizbeach, or the reverse. So in all these cases, the Mishnah says pasal. Now, what does the word pasal mean? So Shmuel came and was mechadesh that really, when you place blood anywhere on the Mizbeach, shaloi b'mkaimai kimekaimai dami, you brought a source from the pasuk where it says vani nasativ lechem ala Mizbeach lechaper. That means that anywhere in the Mizbeach it's going to be mechaper. What does the Mishnah mean by pasal? Pasal means that this zrika of the dam will not be matter to eat from the basar of this carbon afterwards. Usually, the zrika of the dam is what's also matter to eat the basar, but not in this case. It's only mechaper, but you cannot eat from the basar, and that's the pasal that the Mishnah meant. That was the chiddush of Shmuel. The Gemara had a discussion about this, but now the Gemara asks on Shmuel's opinion from another brayse. So the Gemara Meisvei. So the Shaila was asking on Shmuel's opinion. The Brayse says, Chishev litenes anitanim l'mayla l'mata. If the kain that's spraying the blood, so he thinks that the blood that has to be it has to be placed, or Chishev actually refers to the kain that is shechting. He's not yet doing the zrike. He's shechting or is receiving the blood. And when he's shechting, for example, he thinks that the blood of this carbon that has to be placed lamaila, he's going to spray it lamata. Or lamata lamaila. The blood that has to be sprayed lamata, he thinks to himself that he's going to spray it lamaila. Okay, so he's not thinking to himself that he's not going to spray it on the Mizbeach, or he's not thinking that he's going to eat it out of its place. He's going to spray the blood on the Mizbeach, but in the wrong location of the Mizbeach. Okay, now what happened? La'alter, and then he goes, he's thinking that when is he going to spray this? He's going to spray it in the right time, then right away, then kosher. So the carbon will be kosher. So this is not a kind of machshava that could passel the carbon. Why is that? Because what kind of a machshava passes the carbon? There's actually two, generally, we learned already before in the Masechta, there's two kinds of machshavas that could passel the carbon. There's a machshava that's called pigel, when a person thinks that he's going to do an achila shaloi bizmanoi. Now, what does achila shaloi bizmanoi mean? Either that he is going to eat from the carbon out of its right time, or the achila of the mizbeach is going to be out of its right time. What's the achila of the mizbeach? The achila of the mizbeach could be the zrika of the dam on the mizbeach, or the haktara of the emurim, bringing the parts on the mizbeach, not on its right time. That's pigel. Then there's another kind of psul. If a person thinks that he's going to eat in the wrong place, or the mizbeach, or the achila for the mizbeach is going to be the wrong place. Over here, that would mean, for example, the person's thinking while he's shechting the carbon that he's going to spray the blood outside, not even on the mizbeach at all. So that's pasal, not pigel. That's pasal. Shaloi b'mkaima is pasal. It's not, you're not chayav kodesh for that. Pigel is chayav kodesh. Shaloi b'zmanoi, that's when you chayav kodesh. When one thinks that he's going to eat, or the achil of the mizbeach shaloi b'mkaima, that's going to be pasal. Okay, but over here though, what was this machshava? His machshava was that he's going to spray it on the mizbeach, but on the mizbeach, not in the right place. Below or above in the mizbeach, but he's going to do it right away in this time now. So in such a case, this machshava is going to be kosher. Okay, weiter the Brayse says chazar v'chishav chutz l'mekayma. If after he had this machshava, let's say by the shchita, so then afterwards when he by the Kabbalah, by the next avodah, when he was receiving the blood, so now we had a different machshava. His machshava was chutz l'mekayma, that he's going to eat the carbon or spray the blood completely not in its right place. So then, pasal, vein by kares. Like I just mentioned, machshava chutz l'mekayme, that passes the carbon, and there's no kares. Chutz l'zmana, if though in this second aveda he didn't have the machshava of chutz l'mekayme, but he had a machshava that he's going to eat it out of its right time, or he's going to spray the blood not in its right time, so then it's going to be pigel. It's going to be completely pigel, v'chayavin, all of kares. and you're going to be chayiv kares for this. Okay, now the rule regarding pigul is, as Rashi brings here, is that a carbon could only be pigul if the only problem with the carbon is this, that it's pigul. Everything else with the carbon was done right, but it's just this machshava shaloi bizmanoi, then it becomes pigul and it's yichayv kares if you eat from this carbon. If there's another issue with the carbon that you weren't makriv properly, so then it's not exclusively pigul, it actually doesn't become pigul at all. Okay, weiter the Brisa says, L'machar, now going back to the first case that it mentioned, that the Kayin was thinking that he's shechting the carbon and he's going to spray the blood in the wrong location on the Mizbeach. But when? When is he going to spray the blood in the wrong location on the Mizbeach? Not now, when he's supposed to, the altar, but tomorrow. And in the wrong time, he's going to spray it tomorrow. So in such a case, pasul. So the carbon is going to be pasul. What's the pshat in this psul? So the Gemara, this is what the Gemara is going to focus on. What it means over here that it's pasul. He's thinking to spray the blood, which is an achila for the mizbeach, not in its right time, tomorrow. That's a machshava shaloi bizmaneh. But no, this is not going to be pigul. This is only going to be pasul. So again, the kain over here had two machshavas together. He's going to spray it in the wrong location on the mizbeach, but when? Tomorrow. So then the Brisa says pasul. Okay, now chaza v'chishiv, if then in the next aveda he had another machshava, bein chutz l'zmanoi, bein chutz l'mekaimai, it doesn't make a difference here whether he had a machshava to then do the aveda or to spray the blood on the mizbeach, whether chutz l'zmanoi or chutz l'mekaimai. Either way, it's going to be pasul ve'ein by kares. It's only pasul and there's no kares here. And so what's the reason for this? Because once the carbon became pasul by the first machshava that he had, so no pigul not could apply. Because pigul only applies if this is the exclusive soul of the machshava that you had in this carbon. But because the carbon was already pasul with the first machshava, so now whatever machshava you have afterwards, even if it's the machshava shaloi bizmane, which is usually pigul, it will not be pigul. Okay, so now here comes the question on what Shmuel said. If the rule that Shmuel says that when you spray the blood on the mizbech in its wrong location, as far as the kapara of that zrika is concerned, it's like it was sprayed in the right place on the mizbeach. And the word pasul in the Mishnah only meant regarding eating the meat of that carbon afterwards, but the actual zrika itself is like in the right place. So then, hi pasul. When it says over here that this Kaya was thinking that I'm going to spray the blood of this carbon tomorrow on the wrong place on the Mizbeach. Why is it only pasul? Pigulu. It should be pigul. Because this should be like a regular machshava of pigul, where a kayan is thinking that he's going to spray the blood on the Mizbeach out of its time. That's an achila for the Mizbeach out of its time. He was thinking that he's going to spray it in the wrong place on the Mizbeach, but according to Shmuel, in the wrong location in the Mizbeach is like the right location in the Mizbeach as far as the kapara of this zrika is concerned. So this should be a regular machshava of pigul that he's going to spray the blood tomorrow, which is shaloi bizmane. So why does the Brisa say that it's pasul, which implies that this zrika shaloi b'mkaimai is not a regular kind of a proper zrika? Zutra answers. Zrika, that no, over here the rule is as follows. Regarding pigul, there's a new rule here. Zrika the shariya basa b'achila, ma'asil l'dei pigul, a zrika that will cause to allow to eat from this meat of the carbon, that's the kind of zrika that can cause pigul. Zrika de loy shariya basa b'achila le'ma'asil l'dei pigul. However, a kind of zrika that is not a full-fledged zrika, even for this detail as well, to be mater the basa to eat from it.
Like
the halacha of pigul will not take effect.
Like oila?
No, not oila. The point that Shmuel said over here is that when it says in the Mishnah pasul, what does pasul mean? That only legabe eating the basar it's pasul. The zrika itself, the kapara for the zrika is in effect. The eating of the basar does not take effect. That's how Shmuel explained the zrika on the mizbeach shalei b'mkaimai. So what Mazutra is saying is this detail that it's not matter the basar he eat also affects the status of the pigul. It will not become pigul in this kind of a zrika, because in order for pigul to take effect, there has to be a zrika that's a full-fledged zrika for this detail as well, the zrika to be matter to eat. Now Rashi over here says that this concept of pigul that relates over here to the zrika, the point that Mazutra is saying, there can be in two scenarios how pigul relates to zrika. It could either be that you're shechting, and while you're shechting, you're thinking that you're going to be zaydik on the mizbeach shalei b'mkaimai tomorrow. So then the pigul will not take effect because your machshave is to do something, to do a kind of a zrike that would not be mat to the basar because it's in the wrong location of the mizbeach, or b'shas the zrike itself. If a person is zaydik on the mizbeach shalei b'mkaimai, where Shmuel said that it's mechaper, but because that zrike is not going to allow you to eat the basar, if b'shas he does that kind of zrike, he's thinking that I'm going to be makter the emurim, the parts of the carbon on the mizbeach, shaloi bizmanoi, so that machshava during this kind of zrike will also not be pigul.
Is he doing bizmanoi or shaloi bizmanoi?
Again, is he?
He's doing that zrike shaloi bizmanoi.
No, he's doing it bizmanoi. He's doing it bizmanoi. But b'shas the zrike, he's spraying the blood on the mizbeach, shaloi b'mkaimai, right? And he's thinking that he's going to be makter the emurim. He's going to be makter the emurim. Shaloi b'zmanoi. So usually by zrike, if you think to be makted the murim shaloi b'zmanoi, that's an achila of the mizbeach shaloi b'zmanoi, which causes it to become pigul, but not in this kind of zrike because it was in the wrong location of the mizbeach. So it's not the full-fledged zrike that's matter to eat the basar. So therefore, the machshava of pigul will not affect the carbon. That's the chiddush of Mazutre and a new klal b'negeh to the union of pigul. The Gemara brings the source for this. How do you know that this is a thing that's necessary to qualify in order for the carbon to become pigul? The answer is because the pasuk says, if he eats from this shlamim, pigul yiyeh, and it'll be pigul because of the machshava that he had to eat it shaloi b'zmanei or shaloi b'mkaimai, whatever the lashon of the pasuk is. We're speaking about shaloi b'zmanei, pigul. Okay. So now, what do we learn here from the context of this pasuk? Mi shepiguloi gairim loy. If it's a case where the machshava of the pigul is what's causing that now this basar is possible to eat, and it's kares if you eat it. Yatzazeh, however, in this case where he sprayed the blood on the mizbeach, not in its right location, she'ein piguloi gairim loy. It's not the pigul that is the cause for this that he can't eat from this basar. Ela issa davar acha gairim loy. There's something else that's causing that you can't eat this basar. What is that? That he sprayed the blood on the mizbeach in the wrong location. So therefore, the soul of pigul does not take effect in such a case. But if that's the case, if suli nami loy livsal, so if so, the carbon should not be pasul at all, just like the pigul does not take effect. So since there's something else that causes this basar to be pasul, not the machshava that you had now for pigul, so we should say that not only pigul should not take effect, but there should be no psul at all. Answers the Gemara, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak explains that midi the have a machsheves hinuach, that the machshava over here is similar to a machshava that a person has regarding the blood of a carbon, that he's going to leave it and not spray it. He's going to leave it until tomorrow and not spray it. Rabbi Yehuda, and this follows Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. This is a machlekes later here in the Masechta regarding this kind of a case. Rabbi Yehuda says that if a person does not spray the blood on the mizbeach today, he leaves it until tomorrow. He actually leaves it until tomorrow. It passes the carbon. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, just like if you actually leave it until tomorrow, it passes the carbon. So too, if you have the machshava that you're going to leave it until tomorrow, even if you then went ahead and sprayed it right away, but the machshava to leave it until tomorrow will also pass on the carbon. The Chachamim disagree. The Chachamim say that only on machshava, you have the machshava shalei b'zmanoi that will pass the carbon. A machshava to spray the blood shalei b'mkaimai will pass the carbon. Or you have certain karbanis that shalei l'shma could pass it by a chatos and a pesach, but not this machshava that he's going to leave it, that he's not going to spray it. That kind of machshava doesn't pass. He went ahead afterwards and sprayed it right away. It's not going to passel. Rabbi Yehuda says, just like if you would have left it b'poil, it will passel it. So if you had the machshava to leave it and not spray it, it's also going to passel the carbon. So therefore over here as well, when it says that the carbon becomes passel, the reason is because his machshava was l'machar. His machshava was that he's going to leave the blood until tomorrow and spray it then shalei b'mkaimai. It's a machshava to leave the blood and not spray it today. It's no less than this point that Rav Yehuda said that he's leaving the blood until tomorrow, which passes the carbon, because that's a klal of Rav Yehuda. Any machshava to do something which, if you would have done it b'poil, it would passel the carbon. You have that machshava, it passels the carbon. So therefore over here, the carbon will be passel, but no pigel, because it's not a proper full-fledged zrike that is usually that like a usual zrike, which is mater the basar ba'achila, and therefore pigel will not take effect there. Okay, this is the conclusion of the Gemara's discussion. Benegay to Shmuel's pshat in the Mishnah, that when a kohen sprays the blood on the mizbeach, but shalom kaimai, it's mechaper. It's a zrike for the kapara, but not to be matter to eat this basar. Shlakish Amar, Shlakish says the pshat in the Mishnah is different. La'olam posel mamish. When the Mishnah said that you spray the blood in the mizbeach, not in its right location on the mizbeach, the Mishnah means 100% posel, literally posel, not just posel for the basar. If the Mishnah would have meant posel just for the basar, Shlakish holds, the Mishnah would spell out such a detail. When a Mishnah says posel, it means the carbon itself is posel. Now, but at the same time, though, Reish Lakish does not disagree with the point of Shmuel's opinion. He also holds of the Chiddush of Shmuel, which the Gemara brought before a drasha from a pasuk, that when you spray the blood in the mizbeach in the wrong location, it's like you sprayed it on the right location, and it does have to be mechaper. So then, if that's the case, how do we explain the Mishnah here? Why did the Mishnah say pasuk? Says the Gemara v'lo kashya. There's no contradiction from what we learned from the pasuk to the pshat in the Mishnah here, where it's saying pasel, it means that the carbon itself is actually pasel. Because kan shenosan b'shtike. In the pasuk, when it says that wherever you place the blood on the mizbech, it'll take effect, that's b'shtike, which means the person didn't have any other machshava that could pasel. He just sprayed the blood on the mizbech in the wrong place, and the pasuk says that the kapara takes effect. And kan shenosam ba'amire, or another girsa here is b'machshava. Now over here in our Mishnah, when he sprayed the blood in the wrong place on the mizbeach, he sprayed the blood with saying or thinking that this carbon, he had the machshava of shaloi, when he sprayed on the mizbeach shaloi b'kaimai, he had the machshava to eat the basar of this carbon chutz l'zmanai. So he also had that machshava, which would usually be the machshava of pigul, while he's spraying the blood in the mizbeach in the wrong place. So what does the Mishnah say in such a case? In such a case, the carbon will become pasel. It's only going to be pasel, not kares. Why? Because the rule of the Gemara just said, Hayos, you just did this rike shaloi b'mkaimai, so it's not the full-fledged zrike that qualifies to be matter the basar, so therefore pigul will not take effect. But even though pigul will not take effect, but nevertheless it will passel, because this is a zrike on the mizbeach. Shaloi b'mkaimai is k'mekaimai dami, because he holds of the point that Shmuel said that he did do a zrike which is gleidim a kapara on the mizbeach. So therefore, even though it cannot cause pigul, but it still will passel the carbon. That's the pshat in our Mishnah, where it says that the carbon itself becomes pasel. So, according to Reish Lakish, the point here is that there's a certain detail that is not spelled out in the Mishnah. That in the Mishnah it says that he sprayed the blood on the mizbeach in the wrong location on the mizbeach, but you have to add another detail. And while he was doing that, he also had a machshava to eat it shaloi b'zmanei. There was a machshava of pigul that he had at that time. And on that, the Mishnah is saying that it's pasel. Not pigul, but it's going to be pasel. Yeah?
So why ain't you chayiv kares?
Because it's not the full-fledged zrike. That's the point that the Gemara learned out from the pasuk of He'achal ya'achal mepsar zevach shlamach pigul yiyeh. Only a kind of zrike that's mat to the basar. There, if you have the machshava of pigul, will it become pigul? Hayais, this is a zrike that will not be mat to the basar, it will not become pigul. That's what our Mishnah is talking about. The case that the Gemara said before to explain the Braisa, according to Reish Lakish, this is what the Mishnah itself is talking about. Yeah. So over here, this concept, the Mefarshim say that this concept applies over here in this case where he actually sprayed the blood on the Mizbeach with this wrong machshava. Then it will become pasel. Before, the Gemara was struggling with this. Before, the Gemara said that if a person is shechting the carbon on the Mizbeach and he's thinking while he's shechting that he's going to spray the blood on the Mizbeach, shaloi b'mkaimai, that machshava misvara should not pasel at all. because that's the Gemara asked before this question, that it shouldn't passel at all, unless you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that he's going to leave it over. But if we're talking about something else, in our Mishnah, like I mentioned before, there's two options. When you talk about pigul in relation to the zrika of the carbon, there's two options of how that happens. Either when you shecht, you're thinking that you're going to do the zrika shaloi bezmanoi, or while you do the zrika, you think that you're going to be makter, the emurim afterwards, shaloi bezmanoi. So over here what the Gemara is saying is that when you're doing the zrika and b'shas the zrika in the wrong location of the mizbeach, he thinks that he's going to eat or be makter the emurim shaloi bezmanoi. Over here it will not become pigul because it's not a proper zrika, it's not the full-fledged zrika. Why? You see, it's not makter the basar ba'achila, so it does not become pigul, but it will become pasul. Since the zrika itself was done shaloi, it was done with the machshava shaloi bezmanoi, it's gonna pasul. Doesn't qualify with all the conditions properly to be pigul, but it's still gonna pasul the carbon.
What's the difference between natan b'shtika and natan b'amira? What are the consequences of it? I mean,
the psul of the carbon itself. If it was b'shtika, then the carbon is kosher, and the only thing that he can't do is eat from the meat. If it's ba'amira, then the amira means the machshava shaloi bezmanoi, it passes the carbon, and that's the pshat in our Mishnah according to Rish Lakish. Okay, a third pshat in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yechanan says, no, he actually disagrees with Shmuel and Rish Lakish's whole idea that placing the blood on the mizbech in the wrong location is like the right location. Rabbi Yechanan says, both, again, I skipped something? Oh, you're right. Oh, Tanan. Okay, the Gemara here. Okay, let's just see the words of the Gemara. Yeah, Tanan. Okay, now, since Rish Lakish, in essence, agrees to the point of Shmuel that placing the blood in the mizbech in the wrong location is for the kapara. It's like you placed it in the right location. So the Gemara just quotes again the same discussion that it had before. And Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah before. Oh, so this is a Mishnah I was saying before, it's a Braisa. Okay, so that we learned in the Mishnah, Chishev, Litenis, Anitana, Lamata, Lamailo, Lamata, Chulu. Here the Gemara doesn't go through the whole thing again. It just says, V'chulu ad, until the conclusion of the discussion the Gemara already said before, Midi, Hava, Machshavis, Yinuach, Valiv, the Rabbi Yehuda. This is the same question and answer. Everything that the Gemara asked before on Shmuel's opinion applies according to Rish Lakish. Okay, so now the Gemara brings, as I said, a third opinion, Rabbi Yechanan. Now, Rabbi Yechanan starts off with the lashon of idi v'idi. The Gemara before on Daf Chavav Amud Beis brought that there's our Mishnah here on Chavav that says that if you put the blood in the mizbech in the wrong location, it's pasul. But then in the first Mishnah, in the next Pedic, it talks about the same kind of case. He placed the blood on the mizbech in the wrong location, and there, what does the Mishnah say? That if there's any dam hanefesh that's left in the animal, so you bring a kohen kosher and he sprays it again at the mizbech. You do it again. So the Gemara before asked this question. Our Mishnah says pasul, and over there it says that you do it again. So the Gemara before, according to Shmuel, the Gemara explained that over there it's talking about that the first zrika was done by a kohen pasul. It's not the same case like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah, a kohen kosher did the first zrika in the wrong location on the mizbeach. There it was a kohen pasul. But Rabbi Yechanan disagrees with this. Rabbi Yechanan Amar edi v'idi shenasam b'shtike v'shaloi b'mekaymai lav k'mekaymai dami. The Mishnah here that says pasul, and the Mishnah in the beginning of the next Pedic where it says that a kohen can come and take from the dam and nefesh and do the zrika again. The case of the Mishnah is not like what Rish Lakish said, that he had another machshava of shaloi bezmanai while he's spraying the blood on the mizbech shaloi b'mekaymai. No, the only thing that was done wrong here is that he placed the blood on the mizbech not in the right location. That's it. And he disagrees with the whole point that Shmuel and Rish Lakish say. Shaloi b'mekaymai is lav k'mekaymai dami. Which means that when you spray the blood on the mizbeach in its wrong location, it's practically like you spill the blood on the floor. It's not in the right place. It's like you didn't do any zrika at all. There's no kapara at all. So why over there does it say in the Mishnah that you should do it over again? Because simple. V'had ikkedama nefesh. In the Mishnah later, there's more dam in the animal itself, or from the dam of the nefesh of the animal, that you're able to do the zrika again, and therefore you have to do it again. And hadaleka dama nefesh. In our Mishnah it says pasul, and pasul is mashma, you can't do it over again. It's because there is no more blood. That's it. But so in other words, the Mishnah later is just adding a detail to our Mishnah. It's not, there's no chiluk between the two Mishnayos. The halacha of spraying the blood on the mizbech in the wrong location, it's the wrong location, it's like you didn't spray the blood at all. So now the Gemara says, let's see what it said in the Mishnah. Tanan, the lashon of our Mishnah, when it said this halacha, it said pasul, and then the Mishnah added three words. Ve'ein boy koris. There's no koris here when you eat from this. Now the question is, What's the pshat in this addition when it says ein by kadis? Why does it have to add that? Now, according to Rish Lakish, it's understood why it adds that there's no kadis. Why? Because what does Rish Lakish say? That the Mishnah is speaking about a case where he didn't only spray the blood in the wrong location of the Mizbeach, he also additionally had a machshava of shaloi bismanai, which is the machshava of pigul. So that would be a svara to say that this carbon should be pigul. And therefore the Mishnah has to say that it's pasul and there's no kadis. The pasul means that you can't eat from the basar, but because it's not a full-fledged zrika, which is mat to the basar, now it doesn't become pigul. That's a big chiddush that the Mishnah has to add, that there's no kadis for pigul. But Rabbi Yechanan, however, according to Rabbi Yechanan's opinion, my aim by kadis. What's the Mishnah adding here when it's saying aim by kadis? Why would I think that there's kadis? He didn't even spray the blood b'chlal in the right place. According to Rabbi Yochanan, when you spray the blood in the wrong place, it's like you spray the blood on the floor. Is there a concept of pigul when you're not even spraying the blood on the mizbeach? When you do an aveda, you spray the blood on the mizbeach, and you have a machshavah to then eat shaloi bismanai, then there's pigul. If you spray the blood in the wrong location, which is like you just left it on the floor, why would I think that the machshavah here, why would they think that there's any pigul that should apply? Why does the Mishnah have to say that there's no kadis for this, if you eat from this meat afterwards? Says the Gemara Kashya. That remains a question. Now, l'shmuel, my aim by kadis. According to Shmuel, what's the pshat when the Mishnah says aim by kadis? Shmuel explained in the Mishnah that when it says pasul, it means that the carbon itself was mechaper, but it's pasul that you can't eat from the basar. And according to Shmuel, the Mishnah is not speaking about where the kain additionally had a machshaveh to eat later shaloi b'zmanoi. So why would I think that the inyan of kadis applies over here? But according to Shmuel, we could answer this. This is what the Mishnah was saying. Im nasam b'machshaveh pasul ve'eim by kadis. The Mishnah is adding another detail, Takeh. When the Mishnah says the word pasul, it means pasul where he only put the blood in the wrong location of the Mizbeach. He didn't have any other bad machshava. Then it adds ve'ein by kadis. And if he also had the machshava to eat it shaloi bizmanim, which is usually the machshava of pigul, but here ein by kadis, here it will not take effect. Like the pshat the Gemara said before, according to Rish Lakish. Okay, now the Gemara goes back and discusses here Barichis, Rabbi Yechanan's opinion. What does Rabbi Yechanan say? That when you spray the blood on the mizbech in the wrong location, it's no zrika at all. It's practically like you drop the blood on the floor. So Rabbi Yechanan, if when the Mishnah says pasul, it means totally pasul, because when you spray the blood in the wrong place, it's not in its right place at all. If so, so why shouldn't what he did be equivalent to a kain that received the blood in the kli sharis, and then the blood dropped to the floor? And what happens in such a case? You can gather the blood, v'yasfenu, you gather the blood, and now you spray it on the mizbeach. Why is it saying pasul? Which means that you can't gather this blood. Rabbi Yechanan said that the Mishnah later says you have to go back to the behemoth itself and see if there's any dama nefesh to be makabel again. But this blood that you sprayed in the wrong place on the mizbeach, you can't gather it and spray it. Why not? The klal is, once you will makabel it in kli sharis and then it's spilled, you can gather it. And says the Gemara, Savala Kamanda Omar, because our Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yechanan, holds like this mandama that says, Lo Yasfenu, that once the blood touched the Mizbeach, even in the wrong location, and even though it's not considered to be a zrika of a kapara at all, but even this itself, the fact that it touched the Mizbeach is the Lashon, it's koilet. It takes that blood that you can't gather it and do it over a second time. Even though it's done in a oifen that the zrike, the kapara did not take effect at all, doesn't matter. Once it touched the mizbeach, you can't do this over again. Where is the source for this? Everybody agrees. The blood that has to be placed on the mizbeach, above, in the high part of the mizbeach, and he placed it there. Or the blood that's on the bottom part of the mizbeach, and he placed the blood there. But he did it shaloike mitzvasan. He didn't do it properly, meaning he did it with the wrong machshava. So everybody agrees in such a case, lo ya'asfenu. You can't take that blood and gather it and do it over again. Once it touched the mizbech in the right place, he had the wrong machshava, the mizbech takes this blood and it doesn't allow you to take it back and do it over again. Where is there a machlekes about this? The blood that's supposed to be placed on the top part of the mizbeach and he sprayed it in the bottom part. Or the reverse. Now in this case there's a machlekes. Rav Yesi says, Lo Yasfenu, that in such a case, you still cannot gather the blood. You touched the Mizbeach in the wrong place. So you may think, well, it's just like it just spilled on the floor because it didn't even go b'chlal in the right place in the Mizbeach. No, it doesn't matter. Once it touches the Mizbeach takes it, and you can't take it back. But Rab Shimon says that because it was on the Mizbeach in the wrong place, so therefore you could take the blood back, gather it, and spray it again. So the Gemara explains, Mishnah Seinu, according to Rabbi Yochanan, who is our Mishnah going like? Kedivrei Omer, like Rabbi Yosi, that says that lo yasfenu, that you cannot gather this blood and spray it again. So the point there is, even though according to Rabbi Yochanan, shaloi b'mkaimai, the zrika is totally puzzle, it's not mechaper at all, but for this point, that it was on the Mizbech, that the Mizbech takes it, it's kailet, that you can't spray it again, that still takes effect. Lo yasfenu, you cannot take this blood and do it over again. This is one version of how this machlokes between Rav Shimon, Rav Yosi, and Rav Shimon was brought. Another version was Rav Chizda Amar Avimi, that Akal Moedim, everybody agrees, Binitana Lamata Shanosna Lamaila. Blood that's supposed to be sprayed in the bottom part of the Mizbech and it was sprayed above, Shalo Yasvenu, that you do not gather this blood. Definitely, the blood that's supposed to be sprayed above in the Mizbeach and you sprayed it below, that you should not gather it. Why is it a kol shekain? Because hoil v'damim al yainim lamata in ban. When you spray the blood on the top part of the Mizbeach, it drips down to the bottom part. So blood that's supposed to be sprayed on the top part of the Mizbeach, the top is not removed from the bottom because it drips down to the bottom. So definitely this is enough for the Mizbeach to take the blood that you can't now do it over again. Where's the machlekes about this halacha? Blood that's supposed to be sprayed on the inside Mizbeach by a carbon chatos has to be sprayed on the inside Mizbeach, and instead he sprayed it on the outside Mizbeach. Or bachutz, a carbon that's supposed to be sprayed on the outside Mizbeach, that he sprayed it on the inside Mizbeach. Rabbi Yosi says that in such a case, over here it's the opposite. Rabbi Yosi is the one that says yas fenu, that you could gather this blood and do it over again because it went on the wrong mizbeach b'chlal. So over here you don't say that the mizbeach is kailet that takes it and you can't do it over. It went on the wrong mizbeach. Rab Shimon Omer lo yas fenu. However, Rab Shimon says that you cannot gather this blood, because even though it went on the wrong Mizbeach, but once it was on a Mizbeach, you cannot gather this blood and do it over again. So our Mishnah, according to this version, also over here comes out, it's like Rab Shimon. Before it was Rab Yosi, now it's Rab Shimon. But the point is, our Mishnah actually spoke about both cases. Our Mishnah speaks about a case where he sprayed the blood in the wrong location, Lamata, when it's supposed to be Lamaila, or the reverse, and also B'chutz and B'fnim. So in all of these cases, our Mishnah holds that once it goes on any Mizbeach, in any location of a Mizbeach, you cannot gather the blood again. It's kailit, and you can't do it over again. I'll bring you a raya to this also from what we learned in a brayse, this pointer, that even though the blood was not mechaper at all, it's puzzle, but once it touches the mizbeach, you cannot gather the blood and do it over again. Where do we see this? Because it says as follows: Rabbi Yehuda, it says in the pasuk, Zois hi ha oila. So in the pasuk it says, Zois toiras ha oila, hi ha oila moiktam mizbeach kol halayla ad haboker. So all these three terms, Zois, and the word he, and ha'oila, harei miyutim. These are words that are coming to say an exclusion. What's the exclusion in this pasuk? So it's from this pasuk that you learn a halacha, as we'll see in the continuation here, that once a carbon was already brought up to be burnt on the mizbeach, even though it was a pasuk carbon, but it's on the mizbeach, you don't take it off. Ha'oila moiktam mizbeach kol halayla, you leave it on the mizbeach. But it says 3 miyutim, that this halacha that a pasuk carbon brought on the mizbeach remains on the mizbeach. There's 3 cases, 3 psulin that doesn't apply. What are they? Prat lenishchato balayla. If this is a carbon that was shechted lechatchila in the wrong time by night, avoid in the Beis Hamikdash is only by day, it was shechted by night, or v'shenishpach dama, the blood was spilled, meaning there was never a zrikas adam on the mizbeach. You could only eat from the carbon, or you can only be makter a carbon on the mizbeach if the blood was first sprayed, but there was no zrikas adam at all. So then even if you brought it up on the mizbeach, you have to take it down. V'sheyatz adama chutz l'klayim. And the blood of this carbon went out of the azara, and so it passed the carbon. Then in this case, I'm also tated. Even after the carbon was brought onto the mizbeach, you don't leave it on the mizbeach, you take it off. Rab Shimon argues and says, Oyla, when it says in the Pasik, this halacha regarding the Oyla, that if it's brought on the Mizbeach, it remains on the Mizbeach all night, ainly Ella Oylik Sheda. So I would think that it's only a Oyla which is a kosher carbon. So here Rab Shimon disagrees and he says, how would I know that this includes even a carbon that was shechted at night? And the blood was spilled and you never spray the blood. The blood went outside of the Azara. And he lists here a whole list of other psulim as well. Vahalon, a carbon that was left overnight. It wasn't, you didn't burn it sometime during that night. When it was left overnight, it also passes. Or v'hayetze, the carbon itself went out of the azara. V'hatome, the carbon became tome. V'shchanishchat, chutz lizmanoi, it was shechted out of its time, which means l'chayre that it was shechted at night. No, what's the v'shchanishchat chutz lizmanoi? It's before it said already chutz lizmanoi. Sorry, it means the machshava. That's what it means here. He's talking about the person's thought that he shechted it with the machshava to eat chutz lizmanoi, and also b'chutz Rashi. And the chutz l'mekayma, and he shechted with the machshava to eat chutz l'mekayma, and v'shekiblo psulin, that apostle a kayin received the blood, v'zarko as dama, and they sprayed that blood, v'anitana l'mayla, shenastan l'mata. Here, this is the point that's relevant for what we're talking about, that the blood was sprayed on the wrong location on the mizbeach, or v'anitana l'mata, shenastan l'mayla, the opposite. Vanitana b'fnim, shenastan b'chutz. What's supposed to be sprayed on the inside mizbech, it was on the outside. Vanitana b'chutz, shenastan b'fnim. All these psulim, and including also v'ha-pesach v'ha-chatas, as we had in the beginning of the Masechta, that it's specifically these two karbanis, sheshachtan shaloi l'shman. If you shecht it not l'shma, you're thinking for another carbon, it passes the carbon completely. So minaye, and how do I know regarding all of these psulim that once the carbon was brought onto the mizbech to be burnt, so you leave it on the mizbech, you don't take it off already? Tamad Laima, Tairas ha'oila. The word Tairas is riba, Taira achas l'chol ha'oilin. It's adding and it's saying one halacha for all these karbanis that are puzzled, that were brought onto the mizbeach. Shem alu lo yerdu. Once it was brought onto the mizbeach, you don't take it down again. Rab Shimon goes on to say, Yochel shani marbe af hareva v'hanirba. I would think that I would include even the following psulim. A behemah that's either a reva and a nirva, in a relation in one way or another with a man. Or v'hamuktzeh, a behemoth that was designated to be used for avodah zarah, or v'hanevad, it was already worshipped as an avodah zarah, or v'ha'esnan, a behemoth that was used as a gift for his nus, it was called esnan zayna, or v'hamechir, or was used to exchange with a dog. Also in the pasuk it says that it's possible for a carbon. Or v'hakilayim, a behemoth that was born from a crossbreed. Or v'hatreifa, a behemoth that's treifa, or v'yetze daifen. Also a yetze daifen that's born a C-section and not a regular birth is also puzzle. So you would think that all of these psulim as well, once it was shechted and then it was brought up on the mizbeach, that you would leave it on the mizbeach. Tamad leima zais. So here's where Rab Shimon says that you dash from zais to exclude that these kind of psulim, if it's brought on the mizbeach, you have to take it down. And he explains, why am I being marba all the psulim mentioned before, and these psulim I say that even b'diavad you have to take it off. So the svara is marba I'm being marba that these kind of psulim mentioned in the beginning, that l'chatchila these were karbanis, there was a behemoth was right for the carbon. It's a psul that was developed later, and once it was already in Kodesh. And therefore, it has its foundation, it has that sanctity in the beginning, so once it's on the Mizbeach, you can leave it there. But Umaytziani is Elu, however, the list afterwards here, that I exclude, they do not become pasul once it's in Kodesh, it's pasul, it's not roy at all for a carbon, and therefore you can't leave it on the Mizbeach even after it's on the Mizbeach. Now, what's one of the things that Rab Shimon says here in his list? Katani Mia, he said here, that anitana lamata shenasna lamayla or lamayla shenasna lamata, that he put the blood on the mizbeach in the wrong location. And what does it say over here? That in this case, Rab Shimon says that you once it's on the mizbeach, you don't take it off. You leave it on the mizbeach. And v'lei polig Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't argue about this. So the question over here in this is, why wouldn't Rabbi Yehuda argue on this case as well? Rabbi Yehuda said that if the blood was spilled on the floor, there was never a zrika, and then that behemoth was brought onto the mizbeach, because there was no zrika at all, Therefore, even the blood, even though the carbon was brought in the mizbech, you have to take it off b'di'evet. Right? That was the Rabbi Yehuda's opinion here. Now, if so, the blood that was placed on the mizbech in the wrong location, since according to Rabbi Yechon and Shalobim Kaimeh is like the blood was spilled on the floor, so I should say also regarding this halacha that if you brought out the carbon on the mizbech, the b'di'evet, you should take it off. Rabbi Yehuda should argue regarding this case as well. Why doesn't he argue regarding this case? So what that proves is my time. Why didn't he argue? Lav mishum the koltem mizbech, because regarding this halacha, that you leave the carbon on the mizbeach, the blood touched the mizbeach. Here the Lashon the Gemara uses this Lashon, it's kailet. It already took the blood, even though it was not mechaper, and you have to do the whole carbon over again, but koltem mizbeach, and therefore it's not like, regarding this halacha, it's not like it was spilled on the floor. So Shema Mina, so therefore we can understand that the same also applies regarding the halacha that we were speaking about before, lo yasfenu, that blood that was placed on the mizbech in the wrong location, even though it wasn't mechaper at all, you can't gather that blood from the floor and do over the zrika again. Talk to Gemara, Omar Rabbi Eliezer, or Rabbi Lazar, mizbeach hapnimi, the inside mizbeach, and inside the Beis Hamikdash, mekadesh psulin. This will be mekadesh, even something which is puzzle, that if you brought in and sprayed on the inside mizbeach, something that was not supposed to be sprayed on the inside mizbeach, supposed to be sprayed on the outside mizbeach, it's puzzle. When you bring in blood that's not supposed to be brought into the Beis Hamikdash, you bring it inside, it passes the blood. But it doesn't matter. Even though it passes the blood, you sprayed it on the inside mizbeach, and then you took from that carbon and you brought it to be makter on the mizbeach. Because it was sprayed on the inside mizbeach, it will be mekadesh it, that now once you brought it on the mizbeach, it's not taken down again anymore. Says the Gemara, my kamashmal, what's the chiddush of Rabbi Lazar? Tanina, this is one of the cases that was mentioned before in the brayso that we brought. Hanitanim b'fnim, that if you sprayed the blood of the carbon in the wrong place, what was supposed to be done inside was done outside, or the one was supposed to be done on the outside mizbeach, you brought it inside. And then the Mishnah said that in such a case, Reb Shimon says that if you bring the carbon on the mizbech, you don't take it off again. So this is one of the cases that was mentioned clearly before.
What was he supposed to do?
It was a carbon that the blood was supposed to be sprayed on the outside mizbeach, and he brought it inside the Beis Hamikdash, that passes the blood, and he sprayed it on the inside mizbeach. But because it was sprayed on a mizbeach, even though it's the wrong mizbeach, it's kailet for this point, that then if you take from that carbon and you maked it on the mizbeach, you don't take it off. So the Gemara says, from that Mishnah that said this seemingly clearly, that I wouldn't know the point that Rabbi Lazar is coming to be mechadish. If it was only that Mishnah, I would think, when does this apply? Hanamili dam. That's only regarding what it's speaking about there, which is blood that was supposed to be brought out of the mizbech, and you brought it inside. And why is that only by blood? Because the chazile, because the blood is something that sometimes you do spray on the inside mizbeach. There is such a concept. It's fit to be used in certain karbanis on the inside mizbeach. So at least since blood is something that's brought sometimes on the inside mizbeach, even though now not for this carbon, but it will take it to, at least for this point here, that then if you mark the carbon outside on the mizbeach, you don't take it down. But what if it was a carbon mincha? And you take the kaimitz, where you take the fistful from the mincha, and he took that kaimitz and he was makted it on the inside mizbeach. So in such a case, I would say that over here, this doesn't apply, that I would say that it's mekadesh, this kaimitz, b'di'evet, you brought it on the mizbeach. A kaimitz is never brought on the inside mizbeach. It's completely the wrong location. Kamash Malon, that's the chiddush of Rabbi Lazar, that the mizbeach hapnimi is mekadesh, even something that's never supposed to be brought in any kind of way on the inside mizbeach. And Rashi here brings, it says loisalo olav ketayre zara, and ve'oilo mincha. It's never supposed to be brought on the mizbeach. Okay, so therefore that's the chiddush over here, that it says that basically the point over here is that once you put that kaimitz on the inside mizbeach, you leave it there. You leave it on the inside mizbeach. Over here, the point is not that later there's another part of a carbon on the outside mizbeach that you don't take down. No, this kaimitz that you brought on the inside mizbeach, you leave it there on the inside mizbeach. The Gemara asks on this, Meisvei, it says, Nabraisa, Ketayres Zarish, also a Ketayres that does not belong on the inside mizbeach. That was brought onto the mizbeach, legabi mizbeach, teirei, that has to be taken down. She'ein locha mekadesh psulin, because you don't have this concept that you mekadesh psulin, even if it was done in a pasal and davide, and then it was already brought up onto the mizbeach, that it stays there. El mizbeach achitzin. Al mizbeach chitzim beroiloi. The outside mizbeach for something that is roi for it. If it was brought onto the mizbeach, this lashon of beroiloi, Rashi says that this would exclude the case where you weren't mekadesh properly in the kli shadas. For example, by the carbon mincha, if you do the kmitza, and then you don't place that kmitza in a kli shadas before you put it on the mizbeach, it wasn't sanctified b'chlal properly, so then you have to take it down. But the point is, what does it clearly say here in this brayse? Chitza in, by the outside mizbeach, you have this concept that once it was brought onto the mizbeach, you don't take it down, but pnimi loy, not by the inside mizbeach. The brayse here clearly says that it's ketayre zora, once it's ulsa, so then you have to take it down. That's what it seems like. So the Gemara answers, no, actually the opposite is true. Today it's hachi. Answer and be medayik from that brayse as follows. If there's something that wasn't supposed to be brought onto the outside mizbeach because it was something that was done puzzle with the carbon, and you brought it onto the mizbeach achitzin teirei, so then you take it down. Why? She'ei mizbeach achitzin mekadesh psulin elo roiloi. By the outside mizbeach, even though you have this halacha that a carbon that's possible, but once it was brought onto the mizbeach, you don't take it down. But that's only something which is roiloi. Over here by the outside mizbech, you have this limitation. It has to be a kind of a carbon that's roy for the mizbech. It was sanctified in a kli shadas. Then you could keep it on the mizbech. Otherwise, you have to take it off. However, v'hapnimi, the inside mizbeach is actually the opposite. Bein roy loy, bein she'ein roy loy. If the ketayres or whatever it is, kaimetz, you put it onto the inside mizbeach. It doesn't make a difference whether it's roy for the inside mizbeach, whether it's b'chlal not roy for the inside mizbeach. This kaimetz, it's b'chlal not roy. It's not supposed to be brought onto the inside mizbeach. Either way, it doesn't make a difference. Once it's on the mizbeach, you don't take it off. So adarabah, by the inside mizbeach, this halacha of b'di'evet, that once it's on the mizbeach, you don't take it off, applies even stronger. And the Gemara explains what's the reason for this. My timer, what's the basis of this distinction? Because hi ritzpah, the outside mizbeach is like part of the floor of the azara. Why? The outside mizbeach was built from stone, and it was built into the ground. And we're talking about the mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash, not the mizbeach in the Mishkan. They moved around. It was like another keli, but this was built in as part of the ground itself, and there wasn't even the mashiach. They didn't have to sanctify it with the shemen hamishcha like it is for a regular carbon. It's like part of the floor itself, so it doesn't have such a strong kedusha. So therefore, over here, this halacha of once something was sanctified in the mizbech, you don't take it down. It does not apply in every single case. In certain cases, we don't apply that. V'hai klishares, but the inside mizbeach is a keli, which was sanctified with shemen hamishcha as a stronger kedusha, and therefore anything that's brought onto the inside mizbeach, once it's on the mizbeach, the kedusha affects it. You don't take it off from that mizbeach again.
What's the situation?